What's up, Internet? This is Adam with All Pro Media. Today discussing bounce light versus direct light. Direct modified light. We're using a silk to either shoot through or bounce off of. And we're going to let our fabulous assistant slash intern, Kylea, show you exactly how each looks. All right, everybody, say hello to our intern slash assistant, Kylea. Kylea is a student at NCA&T. She is a senior, and she is majoring in communications, specifically mass media productions.
That light went out.
The light went out in the background, so we're gonna fix that real quick. There it is. Ta-da! All right, we're gonna start with Kylea on direct, and this is very specific, direct modified. Modified means that you're putting something in between you and the subject to modify that light, to soften it in some way, or to shape it in some way.
So we've got the silk on these stands, and we have a Dracast LED light coming through the back.
It's specifically the Dracast Bicolor Fresnel 3000.
And we're gonna hit her, and this will be her key light. We've got a kick light on this side hitting her directly unmodified, and this is the 400B.
Okay, let's look at Kylea. Again, this is direct light, direct modified light.
And actually, the silk that we're shooting through is a projector screen, and I actually really like the look of this. It's pretty soft given, you know, it being direct light. Normally you can only get this kind of quality from bounce light, but what I really seem to like about using this is that we have a lot of control over the spill of this light because it's on this big silk.
When you bounce light, not only do you sacrifice efficiency because you lose a lot of lumens bouncing light, but you also lose a lot of control over it. It's not like you can't control bounce light, it's just a lot harder. You need a lot more C-stands, a lot more flags, a lot more anything basically to shape that light. Now, if you're shooting in a big room and you're shooting a large space, it's not so much of an issue. But using light direct like this, it's a lot easier, like he said, to control. Now you'll notice that there are small shadows on the fill side of her face, and those are to be expected no matter if you're shooting bounced or direct. But with bounce light, you do get less of that harsh shadow. This is not harsh, this is actually pretty soft. Kylie, can you hold your hand up for me? Other hand. Kind of hold it where your face is. You kind of see how that shadow goes across her face. It's not really a defined line. It's pretty soft, and like Sean said, I'm impressed with how well this silk, as we call it, looks compared to bounce light. The 8x that we have, that we usually use for bounce, the silk that comes with it is not as good at shooting through. Like the properties or the material within this particular screen, it just illuminates the face a lot better. I don't know what really the difference is. Again, that's probably the material, but it just looks a lot better. I think it has a really good commercial quality to it. It has kind of that really bright white vibrance to it. However, it's still really soft and pleasing. Now, Kylea has pretty great skin, so not everybody's gonna look this good on camera, but this light really complements her features.
I recommend doing this, to be honest, if you want to get a look. If you like this look and you want to replicate it, take a look at this setup, get some big silk, or like I said, even a projector screen, whatever you can afford, and then bounce like a, how big is this?
It's a 3000,
right.
So it's a lot of power, but I mean, you don't need that much power to that's another thing, like we talked about, the sacrificing efficiency. Because you're shooting through, you're getting the majority of the power that you're using, and you don't need as big of a light as you would if you were bouncing. When we bounce light, we're not just using one light, we're using 2, 3, 4 lights. We made sure that we balance the direct light with the bounce light, so you're looking at basically the same amount of lumens on the face that you do for each. Take a pretty good image in your head of what she looks like. We're going to switch to bounce and show you the subtle differences between these two.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the light that we have back here, the 3000, and I'm gonna go over.
Oh, I got it.
All right, so which light is this, so we can tell them?
This is a Dracast 1500 Fresnel. I did say earlier that you usually need more light to bounce. In this case, we don't. We're able to get the silk really close to her face, and bouncing it full power 1500 does more than enough, to be honest with you. We had to turn it down to about 90% of the power to actually get it to fit with the direct light. So this situation is pretty advantageous for us. Usually we don't get this luxury. It's really hard to bounce enough light to actually like key the subject compared to the background most of the time.
Especially if you're trying to light a large set. Right now we're lighting one person, one background, so it's really a good for this demonstration.
Right. Okay, Kylea. And here is bounce light.
Yeah, let's look at that together.
One of the first things that you will notice is there is more spill light hitting the background. Not too much more, but it is noticeable. It kind of takes away as much separation that we had before, but this is something we could change. You know, we're not locked into this setup. Now, something else you'll notice also immediately are the highlights on her face compared to the highlights on the direct light. The highlights aren't as harsh. Now, I hate using the word harsh for each of these setups because they're both pretty soft, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that. They're a little bit more harsh on the direct light. It's just an easier and more natural grade going across her face. Like the feather is very natural compared to how it looked with the direct light. What I'm talking about is light fall off. Basically, as you shoot an object, say Kylea for example, like you see the light kind of naturally grade across the face and go from brighter to darker. That's called light fall off. Light fall off on bounce light is really hard to replicate with direct light. We're using a Dracast 1500 Fresnel, also bicolor, to light her with this. I said before that we really need to use more light when we bounce, but because of the proximity with the silk to her face, we don't need to do that this time. But typically you need more light to bounce. This is just a rare exception. We shoot a lot of commercial and corporate stuff, and I feel that sometimes bounce is appropriate. A lot of the times I think the other method looks better because it gives it that commercial pop. But if we're shooting, we do a lot of real estate brokers and real estate agents. We shoot inside houses and it looks like a lifestyle shoot, so bounce light is definitely appropriate for those. Okay, so we also have a kick light on the fill side of her face. Kill that, yep, there you go. Now we have a nice Rembrandt effect going. Looks actually pretty great, but for what we're doing, it's commercial and it's for YouTube, so we're not really going that dramatic, so give it to me again.
The reason we modify light and bounce light is so that we can get this higher quality of light. We like that soft look. We think it looks much more cinematic. So the next thing we want to show you is what it looks like when you don't have tools like this, and to show why we go the extra mile and try to get the light to look like this.
It's a very old school way of shooting. Bare bulb, think film noir.
Is that as low as it goes?
I think harsh shadows. Hold your, Kylea, would you hold your hand up, your left hand? Now kind of bring it to where you can see the shadow in your face. See how harsh those lines are? That's because that light is unmodified. You're getting every single lumen going to the face and it's not being spread whatsoever. The silk spreads the light, okay? It takes you lose a tiny amount of light as some will actually bounce back. But for the most part, it spreads it as it goes through that silk, making the light source larger. That's one of the reasons why shooting through a silk makes it that much softer. The only way to actually soften light is to make the source larger. That is like rule number 1. Also, the closer the light is to the subject, the softer the light will be. Light gets dirty as it gets farther away from the subject. Okay, you can drop your hand.
So now I'm gonna turn this light down. Right now it's at 78%, and we're gonna look at
right now
the
her
correct exposure.
She is kind of blown. She's okay now. You'll notice immediately the highlights, where on the bounce light they were very controlled, on the direct modified they were very pretty, but yet less controlled, and unmodified they are all over the place. I mean, it looks pretty good, but that's too harsh for my taste. For this setting anyways. Again, there's a time and a place for it, but using like direct light that's unmodified, I'd probably only use it in like a film noir, like a detective story or something like that.
She has good skin though, so I'm actually surprised at how well her face is holding up here.
No, she has great skin because you can see it just kind of soaks it up, and the luminescent, like the really bright qualities of it kind of just bounce off her skin. It almost looks like a kick light for her. But again, like most people don't look this good, so you've got to kind of put that into play. Raise that light up and tilt it down so because we're like, I think we're missing some light. Yeah, right there.
Okay. Jeez.
And bring it this way. We'll kind of give her a little bit of a Rembrandt look.
Toward you?
Yeah, towards me. That's good right there. And now you've got kind of a Rembrandt effect going, but like Sean was saying, those shadows are so distinguishable that it almost ruins the effect of that lighting style. And also that little bit that he brought it towards the front of her face made it, because it's unmodified, it made the light too broad because of its harshness. Now it doesn't look that pretty. Even if he turns it down a little bit, that's a little bit better, but the shadow, as you can see, is still very prominent. This is not really something that you'd want to use. Even if you were doing a dramatic piece, I wouldn't want it to look like this. Okay, so let's recap these 3 lighting styles. We're going to show you them in sequence so you can get a clear idea of what they look like and how different they are. So here is bounce light. Here is direct modified. And here is direct unmodified. When you look at them in sequence like that, the difference is very visible. And that's all we've got for bounce light versus direct modified light. Keep in mind that each lighting setup fits the specific shoot that you have. So again, if you're shooting commercial, you might want to go with bounce. If you're shooting something more dramatic, go with the direct light. And if you're shooting film noir, maybe go with unmodified. I don't know, it's up to you. I don't do that very often at all. Sometimes we do kick light or rim light or an edge light, unmodified, but even still, it's not that pleasing. It's hard to control also. The highlights, remember the highlights. So that's pretty much it for today. We'll see you next week. Be sure to hit that like button and comment, whether good or bad. We do love it. We kind of thrive on that. And hit the subscribe button so you can be a part of this channel. And if you want to, smash that bell to get the notifications. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.